I want to welcome the president of YU, Dr. Joel Mofo. He said everything. And God continue to give you strength to continue, like Dil Torah L'Adira, and to continue to do whatever you do. It's very important. This is the continuation of Am Yisrael. All these young people, they are the next leaders of Am Yisrael. And Bezrat Hashem. And I feel personally, as once here in public, I have to thank YU for everything what they gave my wife and me. Without YU, never be Netiv Aryeh, never be Matan. As again, YU is involved. I will say almost like Coca-Cola. Whatever you throw stones, you have Coca-Cola. Whatever you throw stones, you have some legacy of YU. And Bezrat Hashem continue for many years, and God give you Dr. Joel. Arichus Yomim V'Shonim with your wife and grandchildren.
So I look forward to it ripening fully. And I must say, every time I'm here, there's something new in my life. This is the first time so far that I've been compared to Coca-Cola, which actually I gave up a year ago. Next time, Bina, compare me to seltzer. Seltzer. It's always special to be here, certainly B'Rshus Rosh Yeshiva. Rav Bina is a force of nature. A force of nature that ultimately sustains us. So Hakaras Hatov on my part, if I tell this every year because I think it's important, when I became president of Yeshiva over 13 years ago, I had a period of about 5 months where I was president-elect, and we were living in Washington. I was running the Hillel Foundation internationally. And I worked out an arrament where I'd be at Yeshiva 3 days a week, and I lived in a room in the dorm. And there was an apartment in the dorm. And I remember one night, it must have been after 11, I was in my apartment and someone's knocking on the door late at night. I open the door, it's Rav Aaron Bina. He walks in and he says to me, I only have one message for you. He says, you're the new president. He says, I'm sending you my children. You have to make sure this place is warm. Nachon? Nachon. And he left. And I woke up the next morning and said, did something happen or did I dream that? But in terms of the advice that I got, the chesed of that message and the truth of that message, both was a great lesson to me and should be a lesson to you, because he believes that his investment in you is not for now, it's forever. And I have to say that it's a particular pleasure always to be at Netiv Aryeh, because not just Rav Bina, and thank God his son, but the Rebbeim in this yeshiva are very deeply committed to both giving you the strongest foundation in Torah and the strongest foundation in Ava and Chesed. And that's what makes this place special, in addition to the young people who it chooses and who chooses it. You understand that you're being here, you're part of a group that's somewhat self-selecting. People already know Netiv Aryeh. They know what they can get and how they can grow, and you choose to be here, and that's very special. So I want to just share a brief message with you this morning, and I'm honored to be here. There is a philosopher in America named David Foster Wallace. He gave a famous commencement address at Kenyon College several years ago, and they published it into a little book. And the opening story in that speech resonates with me, and I think I want to share it with you. The story is as follows. It's a very small, quick story. There are two young fish who are swimming along in the sea. As they're swimming, an older fish swims toward them. And as he passes them, he turns to them and he says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And he keeps going. Two young fish swim on a little bit more, and one fish turns to the other and says, "What the heck is water? What the heck is water?" So what does that mean? Now, this, by the way, is the audience participation part of the discussion. What's the story mean? Don't feel any pressure, but they answered this in Shalavim. What does it mean? Yes, sir. Who are you?
My name is Micah.
From where?
From Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Where?
The suburbs of Milwaukee.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Been
It's a
there.
place. It exists, actually.
It's a lovely place.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're fully immersed in something, you're not always aware of it.
That's exactly right. When you're fully aware. It's very nice if you support each other so nicely. When you're fully immersed in something you're not aware of. Okay, let's want to expand on that, or expound on that, or contract on that. Yes, sir. Who are you?
Shimon Cantor.
Hi, Shimon.
Specifically when you're young and older people look at you and they realize that you have, you're immersed in what life source is.
Yeah. It's interesting. I never looked at it that way, and you're the second person who's told me that. The lesson also is that the older fish has something to tell the younger fish. And I think that's a particularly Jewish interpretation of this, and very nice. Any other? Okay, so let's go on that a little bit. We are so often not aware of the sea in which we're swimming. We're immersed in it. The fish have no idea. They're in the sea. This is what they know. This is how they breathe. This is how they live. This is how they move forward. Take them out of the sea and put them on the land, and they'll notice that their gills are not working, and they'll understand they were somewhere else. But when you're there, you don't know it. L'tov l'ra, by the way. Because you are influenced by the sea. Its currents carry you in a certain way, pushes you towards a certain shore. If someone pollutes the sea, you don't get to survive. There are lots of different schools of fish in the sea, and who you choose is there. But if you are aware of the fact that you're in the sea, it helps you with your own self-awareness. It helps you recognize where you are. I can make many lessons from this. The one that's obvious is here you are. And you're going through wonderful experiences every day, and sometimes, I hope, challenging experiences every day, and you're getting something out of it, and you're growing, and you're contributing to it. How much more if you say, what the heck is water? How much more if you say, wow, let me be aware of where I am, and therefore I will savor what I'm doing more. I will be conscious of it. I believe the whole process that we're reading about now and living, which is Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is our change from Avdut L'Cherut, is the process of Hashem preparing us to be participants in His covenant, to know, as we'll read next week, right? If you listen to my voice, if you keep my brit, if you make yourself segulami kol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz, if you choose me, I like to say we're not the chosen people, we have to be the choosing people, right? If we listen to His voice, if we observe the bris, if we make ourselves chosen to God, what's the rest of the deal? V'hayisem li mamleches v'atem tiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. Then you become to me a kingdom of priests and a noble nation. The deal is, I'm giving you this Torah. It's a great life. It's a great way. It's an important way. It's a responsible way. And if you do that, you get to be my partner, be a noble people, and model our values and be an Or Lagoyim, and be a light unto the nations. To me, that's the deal. It's certainly not we're better than everybody else and we should go hide somewhere, observe the Torah, and tell each other how holy we are. There are those who believe you should live that way because the world is very corrupt and dangerous, and I take no issue with them. I respect them. I just disagree. On the other extreme, there are those who say, what's all this nonsense? You know, there's no sense to this, and the world is out here. Everybody's in different places, so let's do our own thing. All of these rules are terrible. And let's have fun, and let's have a good life. And in the words of a philosopher, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Who was the philosopher who said that? Anybody know? Epicurus. You know how we say Epicurus in Hebrew? Any English majors? Epicurus? Epicurus. What's Epicurus? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. We know better. It's not about there being a God, it's about us. It's all about us. So what the heck? So we don't believe that either. We believe we sit in the center, not because it's the center, because it's the golden place. It's where we get to commit ourselves to Torah, based on Torah, to explore all of God's wisdoms, and to dedicate ourselves to living a life where we can be Mekadesh the Chol. If you know the sea you're swimming in, you get to be Mekadesh the Chol. If I'm aware of it, I think Kedusha is a sacred self-consciousness. It's like being super aware. Like being super aware. You know what I mean, because you have those feelings from time to time. Lahafach, you also have to be careful of the sea. If you're aware of the sea that you're swimming in, sometimes you're not in the most supportive sea, and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it, but it's affecting you. There's a sea we swim in. Have it in my pocket. This is part of a sea we swim in. Now I'm old enough. When I grew up, I love that. When I grew up, right, the word you was spelled with a Y. When I grew up, people made more phone calls and talked to each other. And today, this instrument is used more for text messages than it is for calls. For me, I had to know someone well before I friended them or befriended them. To me, sentences had adjectives. I don't write adjectives on this. Now, by the way, if you think I'm pointing to this as the enemy, I'm not. Technology is never the enemy. The same technology that built Migdal Bavel built the Mishkan in the desert. So it's up to what you do with technology. This technology also has something on it called WhatsApp. Right? So WhatsApp, all my 6 children, and my children-in-law, and my wife, and I, talk to each other all the time, and I get to have the nachas every day, even though they're all over the place, that I see that they're friends. And I love it. Real friends. Also, they haven't figured out how to hug someone with this. But this is part of our sea now. Cable news is part of our sea now. And you're always seeing breaking news. Sometimes it's breaking for 5 days. But it's whatever the biggest catastrophe in the world is at the moment, and it stays breaking news until the next catastrophe. And we don't even realize how that's our sea. So we keep seeing bad things all over the world, and the other thing, that means the world is much smaller, right? So you'd think you have more of a sense of power, but no, you can't do a thing about an airplane that goes down in the Sinai. You can't do a thing to help anyone in a tsunami. So you end up feeling disconnected, like you feel disconnected on the internet. It's a sea you're swimming in. It's not necessarily a bad sea, but sometimes it's filled with algae or plankton, and you have to work your way through it. So that's pretty important. So a few weeks ago, we read about the founder of the Rabbeinu family, Moshe. And I'm very taken by what we get to learn and identifying with Moshe. Moshe had an interesting identity as he grew up, right? He was seemingly in 2 places. He was Prince of Egypt, and he was the son of Hebrew slaves. And that had to be a real issue for him. And we read about how one day he goes out of the palace, knowing that he's Prince of Egypt and the son of Hebrew slaves. And he sees an Egyptian smiting, I like that, smiting a Hebrew slave. And the Torah says what? The Torah says, Vayifen kol v'cho, he turned hither and yon. I tell this because I like to say hither and yon. And when else do you say hither and yon? Vayifen kol v'cho, and he looked hither and yon. Vayar ki ein ish, and he saw that there was no person, and then he smote the Egyptian. What does that mean? Vayifen kol v'cho, vayar ki ein ish. So kipshuto, he was going to do something, and he looked around to make sure that nobody would out him. He saw there was nobody, he did what he had to do. Now, in fact, people knew what he had done, so it's an understanding, but I don't like that one. The other one is Moshe was there, he saw this, he knew it was bad, he didn't want to get involved. Vayifen kol v'cho, and he looked around to say, somebody better help this guy. Vayar ki ein ish, and he saw there was no one there. He learned Pirkei Avot, so he knew In a place where there is no man, strive to be a man, and he acted. Also a nice shot. I see it, a little differently. I think Moshe was a conflicted person. He was Prince of Egypt, he was child of slaves, and you can live with that for a while, but at a certain point you have to say, what sea am I swimming in? Vayifen kol v'cho, and he looked here and he looked there. Vayar ki einish, and he said, who's the man that I am? And that was a moment of decision. And he acted, he said, I'm a Jew. And that was the beginning of his journey to Har Sinai. That's why you're here. Vayifen kol v'cho, vayar ki einish. Kind of important. And you've put yourself in a sea where you can be aware of that and decide what you're doing. Please God, for many of you, I'll have the privilege of working for you in a year or two at Yeshiva University. A different sea, but made up of the same water. Maybe a little more complicated of a sea. But you'll be aware of that and you'll grow beautifully in that as well. Some of you will go into other seas and just be equipped to be aware of the fact that you're swimming in a sea. Last story. There's a story told about a guy who gets in his car to go home and gets on the highway and is driving. His cell phone rings. He picks it up. It's his wife on the phone. She's frantic. She says, Henry, I was just watching the news. There's a car that's going the wrong way on the highway. Please be careful. Henry says, one car? There are hundreds of them. Three. Some of you got it, some of you still working on it. Okay. Sometimes, or many times, we, as a people, are going against the traffic. We're going against the traffic. The traffic in the world is going one way, we're going another. But even though we're going against the traffic, we're going in the right direction. So what do? It's similar to the sea, right? You're in that environment. So the easiest thing to do is, oh my gosh, I'm going against the traffic, turn around and go with the traffic. The horns are all telling you to do that. Your sense of imminent death is telling you to do that. You say, hey, they're all going that way, it can't be bad, that must be the right direction. But you're going in the wrong direction. Because you know the right direction. And the question is, what do you do? Right? So if you have a GPS, you can look on the GPS. It'll show you a service road you can go on. So you can go against the traffic, but you'll go in the right direction. Our GPS is the Torah. But don't think that's easy. I'm not even going to tell you that the direction that the cars are going in are all bad. Some of it's good, some of it's right, but it's not our direction. It's not our direction. Sometimes going against traffic is going in the right direction. So first of all, you've got to figure out what direction you're going to. Secondly, you have to negotiate for yourself how to get there. And thirdly, if you're lucky, you'll be with cars that are going in that direction. Because you're not the only one going in the right direction. There's a whole community that's doing so. And you need to make sure that you find that community and you're part of that traffic lane. Maybe occasionally at a stop sign you can even turn to someone going the other way and say, I know you're going with the traffic, but that's the wrong direction, come this way. That's pretty much the story of our lives. We do get to be Mekadesh the Chol. From this past Shabbos' first mitzvah for a people, HaChodesh Hazeh, when we're told that we get to be Mekadesh the Chodesh, that we partner with the Ribbono Shel Olam, that the Ribbono Shel Olam is Mekadesh Shabbos, but we get to be Mekadesh Yom Tov, because we say when the first day of the month is, so then we look to 15 days. We're God's partner. The whole 40 years is a process of our weaning ourselves from being dependent to being partners with God, and after 40 years, we might have gotten it, at least for a little while, and we got to go into Artseinu HaKadosha to be an Olam Goyim. That's why you're here. That's what we all strive for. That's what your education is about. The next several years are very important. But whether you are at YU or someplace else, okay, make sure you're focused on knowing what sea you're in. I would say, make sure you swim in the best and most safe and challenging sea you can be in with a great school of fish. Right? But whatever sea you're in, be aware of it, because then you'll figure out which way the traffic, I'm mixing metaphors here left and right, which way the traffic is going, and you'll make sure that you go in the right direction. It's a pleasure to be with you. You know that we have wonderful representatives like Rabbi Cohen. Where did he go? He probably left.
Right here.
You're here? Very good. You got 2 points for that. Rabbi Jonathan Cohen is here. Mrs. Jerry Mansdorf is here as Director of Admissions. We want to help you any way we can, but the best way I can help you is to say, recognize the sea that you're swimming in, right here, right now, and bless it. Thank you very much.
So you're saying how your belief is that we should spread the light to the world and be part of the world versus other beliefs that you should be separated. So in what way do you think YU helps, like Chabad obviously goes on filming all over people and they're all over the world. How does the YU community spread the light of the world?
Oh, first of all, I think it's next. I think you've spent this year or this year and a half, right, immersing yourself in Torah, immersing yourself in Derech Eretz, gaining skills. And I don't think, boy, now you're at the mountaintop and now it's b'diavad the rest of your life. I think this place launches you. And the next place is beautiful and more complicated. And in some ways harder, because it's next. So what YU does is say, welcome to the world. Right? And it achieves what we have to always do as Jews. We need to be a part of the world, and we need to be apart from the world. Okay? YU is kind of both, and that's pretty much the model that you strive to achieve. And congratulations, it'll be harder. And you're going to have to work harder. Right? But YU says, of course, this is the derech Hashem has given us, of course we can do it. You'll spend hours a day learning Torah with a lot of other fish. Right? And then you'll spend time preparing for knowledge, for wisdom, for being engaged in sports, in writing a newspaper, in acts of chesed, in political action. But you're going to do it not, here's the Torah and here's this, but you're going to do it with a sense of shleimut. You're going to have an integrated life based on Torah. And that's not just going to be handed to you, you're going to have to work for it. And you'll have friends who'll share it. And you'll choose the Rav that you think most resonates with how you want to learn. Okay? And I guarantee you, you can get nothing out of it. Okay? But you won't, because you have to put yourself in it. Number one, you have to be aware of the sea that you're in. Number two, you have to know the direction you're going. And number three, you have to bring yourself to it. You have to have that self-awareness. And then you'll love it. Okay? Most people love it. It's harder than any other school, but it's not impossible. And there are different levels you can attain. And there are a ton of people there, largely due to Rav Bina, because I listened. A ton of people there who are going to be available to you to guide you and to give you strength and to give you love. And we have mashgichim, and we even have a mashpia, Rav Weinberger. So when you need a farbrengen, you have one, right? And it's the next step, and it's a great step. So that's my answer. Any other questions? Good, I didn't need any other. That was the right one. Have a wonderful day.